So one of my favorite things to do is to explore a battlefield and literally walk in the footsteps of not only the soldiers, but of the commanders and generals that commanded those very armies. Well, one of my second favorite things to do is visit military museums, especially when it has to do with the American Revolution. So in this episode, we are visiting the American Revolution Museum here at Yorktown, and from what I've seen, we are in for a treat today. Now, during my visit, the museum was pretty busy, and out of respect for those visitors, I didn't want to get in their way, so I wasn't able to show you everything. So I hope that this quick video will hold you over until you can see it for yourself. Now, we're going to start here. Now, have you ever wondered who was there? Read their stories, look into their eyes, and they were there. And what you're about to see is a handful of witnesses from the American Revolution. Now, this person was there at the Boston Massacre. Now, Thomas Perkins was 5 years old in 1770 when he witnessed the Boston Massacre from the window of his father's shop. That is absolutely unbelievable. And here you can see the famous rendering of that moment. Now, our second witness to revolution was at Lexington and Concord, and this is Jonathan Harrington. Now, Jonathan Harrington was just 16 years old at the time of the battle, and his mom would barge into his room and wake him up yelling, "The regulars are coming." And John and some of his brothers would witness the first shots of Lexington and Concord. Our next witness? Oh, no big deal. He just witnessed and was a part of crossing the Delaware with Washington himself. Unbelievable. Conrad Hayter was in the Continental Army and took part in crossing the Delaware. This is Seneca Chief Governor Blacksnake. And what did he see? Well, he was there at the Battle of Oriskany. Unbelievable that they have these photos of these veterans here. And here you have a quick snapshot of the Battle of Oriskany here. Something else to remember is there were slaves that witnessed the American Revolution, and no matter the outcome, they were still going to be slaves. And this is Caesar, who was a slave in New York during the American Revolution. And you can see a quick snapshot of what New York would have looked like during that time. Just wanted to stop and show you this pretty cool visual. This is showing just ordinary citizens, blacksmiths, farmers marching off and getting ready to fight the world's superpower during this time, the British Empire. Oh wow. So what you're seeing here is a pretty amazing visual of the Battle of Great Bridge. Now, this battle took place in early December of 1775. And what you're seeing here is the 14th Regiment of Foot. I believe they were British Grenadiers, and they're assaulting Patriot breastworks. Now, this bridge was of great importance because it was a main supply route for Norfolk during this time. So you're seeing the British Grenadiers assaulting the Patriot breastworks that were constructed on the south side of the river. And this was an overwhelming Patriot victory early on in the war. So what you're seeing now is what your standard French soldier during the American Revolution would be carrying and would be wearing. I believe they had Charleville muskets. I'm not sure of the year. And obviously the American forces would use anything they can get their hands on. Here you have some similar weapons that were carried by the American militia. Again, they would get their hands on anything and use it, and the Americans, Continental forces would use Brown Bess muskets, Charleville muskets, and I believe even Spain supplied arms to the American army. Pretty interesting. Okay, so before we head into the war in the South, I want to show you some of these weapons of war that were used at sea. Now, this is an aspect of the war that I don't know a whole lot about, so I just wanted to show you some of the cutlasses that were used. Of course, you can see your standard flintlock musket, bayonets, small daggers, your flintlock pistols, and this caught my eye. Here is a very archaic looking, I'm assuming this is a grenade. Okay, so you would go before you board a ship. I'm assuming the boarding party would throw these over onto the opposing ship. And here's your flintlock muskets. I'm sorry, your flintlock pistols. And yeah, so here's some of the weapons used at sea, which you don't really think about during the American Revolution. And credited with being the quote-unquote father of the U.S. Navy is John Paul Jones, who, again, this is saying he's the first naval hero of the Revolution. And he essentially served at sea since he was 13 years old. Now, John Paul Jones was famously known for sinking numerous British ships during the American Revolution, and in 1779, he sank 2 British ships off the coast of England, so that was his most famous exploits from the Revolution. Alright, there doesn't seem to be a ton of people in this portion of the museum, so we're going to explore the war in the South.
It will not be long before it becomes necessary for you to seek safety by joining us. The progress of Tarleton's British and their loyalist supporters was marked by burning and devastation. I am Daniel Morgan, Brigadier General in the Continental Army. Join the militia and fight with us against British tyranny.
So I'm a very visual person, and I appreciate interactive exhibits. So you can see here, this board tells you where battles happen. Battle of Thomas Creek and Alligator Bridge, not too far from where I live. Both failed American incursions into Florida. Here you have Battle of the Rice Boats, Siege of Savannah, Capture Savannah. I haven't heard of some of these. And then here, Battle of the Chesapeake between the French Navy and the British Navy. And you see Battle of Great Bridge. Of course, Virginia was another hotbed, just like during the Civil War. Here's the Siege of Augusta. And a lot of battles happened out west that I wasn't aware of. This is really interesting. You can get the whole American Revolution in one snapshot. Alright, here's some pretty cool artifacts. This is a gun carriage from the vessel the Betsy. And let's see what this says here. The Betsy, like most ocean-going vessels of the period, would have had a few small cannon on board for defensive purposes. And right next to it, here, is a 4-pound cannon that was recovered in the York River, and that is on a reproduction carriage. And here you have a bar shot that was found in the York River. That is amazing. It's in pretty good condition. So we've made our way through the museum, and now we're entering a Continental Camp. So out back behind the museum is a replica of what a Continental Army camp would have looked like during that time. Pretty cool. So the camp is set up by the book here. You can see Company G, and then tents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to 8 soldiers would sleep in one of these tents. And this is where the adjutant would be, and he would not only interrogate people coming into the camp, he would dish out punishment apparently as well. So one thing to note is rank has its privileges. So here's your enlisted tents, and right here, this is where your officers would be. You would have your captains and other lower ranking officers here. You can see the accommodations are a little better. Let's take a quick peek. It says Captain Waldmeyer. It's pretty cool. And over here, this is a tent for the lieutenant colonel or colonel. So he'd most likely be in charge of this regimental area. And we make our way inside. Now, it's also important to know that officers around this time, they were considered well educated, and most of them were pretty wealthy. So some of the objects in here were his personal effects, and they weren't standard issue. Pretty neat. And this would be his uniform here. And right here, where they're giving a demonstration, that is your field surgeon. So he'd be in charge of the medical care, or lack thereof.
Major battlefields or places where things are happening. And then the regimental surgeons have the ability to call in or get the help from the hospital corps, which would bring in more staff, more resources to man those hospitals when necessary. Because the regimental surgeon is one man for a regiment of up to 300 to 500 soldiers. So he's got to deal with all the people within that camp.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Mike, ready? Take aim. Fire! Smoke and noise from one musket. How noisy and smoky and scary a battlefield's gonna be. Take aim.